This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, good morning, Rabbi. Parshas Noach. Hashem tells Noach, "Yikol habehema tahira tikach lecha shiva ish ve'ishtoi." From the kosher animals, the behemos hatahiros, you should take 7. When habehema shaloi tahira hi shnayim ish ve'ishtoi. Yeah, not all animals are created equal. Not all animals are created equal. For the kosher behemos, you take 7. From the non-kosher behemos, you take 2. So Rashi is bothered by the kasha. What do you mean behema ha-tahira? There's no such thing as Torah and tameh. The Torah wasn't given yet. Says Rashi, Ho'asida liyos tahira liyisrael. What is destined to be tahar. What do we see from here? Lamadnu shalamad Noach Torah. How in the world would Noach know what's kosher, what's not kosher? There's no Torah. Torah wasn't given. There is no kosher. There's no treif. Must be, we see from here, that Noach learned Torah.
Wow.
Noach learned Torah. Okay. Says that the problem is, Rabbi say, that the Gemara says, Masechta Sanhedrin, one little problem. The Gemara says, V'amar Rabbi Yochanan, the Gemara says in Sanhedrin Daf Nuntes, Oived kechavim sha'oisik b'Torah chayiv misa. A guy that learns Torah is chayiv misa. Shenemar Torah tziva lanu Moshe Moira Shakilas Yaakov. We say lanu Moira Shavlaylam. It's our inheritance and it's not theirs. So if a guy learns Torah, not only is the guy not doing a good thing, he's doing a bad thing. So here you see a guy, he's huddled up in the corner learning Masechta Krisos, and he's learning about what he's going to get. Right? Because a guy that learns Torah is chayiv misa. So Gemara asks, if that's the case, if a guy that learns Torah is chayiv misa, so now we should have a new mitzvah for goyim. Besides the shiva mitzvahs b'nei Noach, right? What are the shiva mitzvahs b'nei Noach? The 3 cardinal sins: don't kill, don't commit adultery, don't serve idols, and then Aleph Beis Gimel Daled Iver Min Achai Mevarich Es Hashem Gezela and dinim. So the question is, we should have an 8th. Says the Gemara, why isn't it counted among the Shiva Mitzvahs Noach? Says the Gemara, it depends how you read the pasuk. If you read the pasuk Moirasha, that it's our inheritance, so it is in the Shiva Mitzvahs Noach. It's included in stealing. You ever go to the supermarket? I don't know why this happens. You go to the supermarket, you see a guy. He looks to his right. He looks to his left. Nobody's looking. He takes a cherry. Right? So he's a ganav. The guy's going to have to come back to this world to pay back the cherry to the store. He's a ganav. But if he's a Jew, it's a halbatzara. If he's a guy, he's chayiv misa. Because a guy is chayiv misa for stealing, even pachas mishav kruta. So according to the opinion that it's moirasha, so then it's gezela. And according to the opinion it's ma'irasa, according to the opinion, it's the Torah. We're married to the Torah, right? The Gemara tells us that you're not to learn Torah in front of an Am Haaretz, because Hagloi made Torah b'fnei Am Haaretz kebayel arusasoi lefanav, because everybody is married to the Torah. Everyone has erusin to the Torah. But if you don't learn Torah, you never sealed the deal. You never consummated the marriage. So here you have an Am Haaretz. He's married to the Torah, but he never did Nisuin. So if you're engaged in learning Torah in front of the Am Haaretz, you're making him jealous. It's like you're being boyal as arusa b'fanav. But according to the Man Amar, that we're married to the Torah, and therefore if a guy learns Torah, it's like Nara Hamurasa, so that's also one of the Sheva Mitzvahs B'nei Noach. So therefore, for whatever reason, either it's Nichlal, either it falls under the category, the umbrella of Gezela, or it falls under the category of Arayas. And that is why it's not one of the Sheva Mitzvahs. But if a guy comes to you and asks, am I allowed to open up the art scroll, Masechta Yevamos, and learn? Say, no. So, pal, you do that, you're in big trouble. You can't learn. A guy is not to learn. So Gemara asks, Meisvei, I'll ask you a question. How you Meir Oimer? Minayin sha'afilu oivei koichavim v'oisek b'tar shehu k'kayin gadol. How do I know that if a guy learns, not only is it not chayiv misa, not only is it good, he's like the kayin gadol shenemar asher yasa oisam ha'adam v'chai bahem, that the Torah is something that you do and you live by. It doesn't say Kohanim, it doesn't say Leviim, it doesn't say Yisraelim, it says Adam. So we learn from here that a guy that's Oisik B'Torah is like a Kohen Gadol. So how could we say a guy that learns Torah is Chayiv Misa? No, Fakert, a guy that learns Torah is like a Kohen Gadol. Says Gemara, no. Hasam B'Sheva Mitzvahs Ditu. You know what a guy is allowed to learn? A guy is not allowed to learn what he's not allowed to do. He's allowed to learn about the Zayin mitzvahs. A guy has to sit down and learn. He can't steal $1. He can't steal a penny. He can't steal a peanut. He can't go to the supermarket and steal a peanut. A guy is allowed to learn the machlokes Ksais Achosh and Reb Chaim about what's pshat in Ritzicha. A guy is allowed to learn what's pshat in Birchas Hashem. Is it a Maisa Klola? Is it a Chalois Klola? A guy could spend his whole life devoted to learning Zayin Mitzvahs B'nei Noach. But a guy is not allowed to learn Torah. Okay? What we would like to discuss today is a very contemporary question of, first of all, is a guy allowed to learn? Are you allowed to teach a guy Torah? Are you allowed to make Torah available on... Well, is a guy, let's say a guy is converting. Is he allowed to learn Torah? Are you allowed to teach him Torah? Are you allowed to make Torah available through media? It used to be they wanted to know, could you put Torah on tapes, on CDs? Now we have much bigger questions. Are you allowed to make the Torah available on the internet? Here, you check your hits before Yom Kippur. It's a certain amount, and you see, after Yom Kippur, you get 500 hits. They weren't all people in Australia.
Because Rabbi Tights used to learn on the radio.
Right. Okay, so we'll have his question over here. That's the question. Are you allowed to make Torah available to the public, to Goyim? And let's deal with the question at hand. What about Noach? Since the Gemara tells us in Masechta Sanhedrin that a guy that learns Torah is Chayiv Misa, and Noach was not learning Hilchos Ritzicha. Noach was learning which behemoths are kosher, which behemoths are treif. How is Noach allowed to do that? That's the question of the Maharal, the Goraryeh. Look at number 4. In fact, the Goraryeh. V'ha Amar Perek Daled Misais Goy Shalom HaTorah Chayiv Misa. So it's a big question. How could Noach learn Torah? So let's first take a look, number 5, at the Levush Ha'ira. Levush Ha'ira was written by the Levush. Levush Ha'ira is what we call a super commentary. Super commentary is a bibliographical term for a commentary on a commentary. And Levush wrote a commentary on Rashi, Mordechai Yafa. His name was Mordechai. So if your name is Mordechai, your favorite pasuk in Tanakh is Mordechai Yatzon Lefnei HaMelech, Levush Malchus Tcheles Vachur V'Atarsav Gedoyla V'Sachrich Butz V'Argaman V'Ir Shushan Salav Samecha. And that's why Levush wrote a sefer Levush Malchus, the sefer Tcheles Vachur. He wrote a sefer Salav Samecha. He wrote a sefer Ir Shushan. These are and he also wrote a commentary on Rashi, Levush Ha'ira, after the pasuk La'ihudim Haisa. And he wants to know, how could Noach learn Torah? So first he wants to say, well, Noach is what we call a tamim. Right? Tamim haya b'dayrosav. Perfect. Now we know, what does it mean to be perfect? Perfect means in body. Now in Arla, a foreskin is considered a blemish. So that means Noach was born Gemalt. Oh, so it's like he's already a Yid. It's like he was already converted. Very difficult to understand. Converted to what? What was he converted to? There were no Jews. There's no Judaism. There's no Torah. So what does that mean? He was already Gemalit. And the Levush says it's still doichek because we know Shem had a yeshiva. We don't find anywhere Shem had a milah. And yet Shem was teaching Torah. He had a big yeshiva. And the Levush says, well, maybe they had midos toivos. But bottom line, the question is, how is Noach allowed to learn Torah? Comes along the Maharal, and the Maharal says like this. Why is a guy not allowed to learn Torah? Either because Moira Shah, it's our inheritance, and not the Goyim's inheritance. So if that's the case, when is it our inheritance? When God gave it to us. But before God gave it to us, it's not our inheritance, so it's not considered stealing for the guy. Or when is it considered like Jews are married to the Torah? When Torah tziva lanu Moshe, and Moshe commanded. But before Moshe commanded us, so then we're not mu'uras to the Torah, and therefore before the Torah was given, Goyim were allowed to learn Torah. Levush doesn't like that. Levush says, before the Torah was given, Goyim were not allowed to eat Ever Min HaChai. They were not allowed to curse Hashem. They couldn't kill. What?
How did they know this?
How did who?
Who told them about Sheva Mitzvah spinning?
Through Nevuah, through Adam HaRishon. Well, they knew they were being punished for it.
Yeah, I'm saying, but how did they know? Why did they be punished? Who told them?
They either had a tradition from Adam HaRishon, or they had some kind of communication, right? But in any event, the Levush doesn't like this idea that, look, they couldn't keep Shabbos before the Torah was given, so why they were allowed to learn Torah before the Torah was given? Okay, so that's what we would like to investigate today. First of all, how could Noach learn Torah? And in general, what are the halachic parameters of teaching a guy Torah? Let's say you come out of the kollel today, and you're walking down the street, and somebody stops you and says, "Hey, what did you learn in kollel Agra de Pirka today?" You're allowed to tell them. Are you allowed to get involved? You're allowed to get into a discussion. You're working in an office, and your friends, they ask you, just out of curiosity, what do you learn? What do you do? What's in the Talmud? Are you allowed to tell them? Are you allowed to explain it to them? Okay. So let's see the Rambam. Says the Rambam in Hilchos Malachim, Perek Yud, Halacha Tes. Goy sha'asak b'Torah chayev misa. Goy that learns Torah is chayev misa. Lo yasek ela b'shev mitzvah shel hen belvad. The only thing they can learn is the Zayin mitzvahs. V'chein goy sheshavas afilu b'yoyim miyimais hachol. A goy that rests during a weekday even. Im asa oisay liyatzmai kamay Shabbos chayev misa. A guy that picks a day as a day off, as a rest day, is chayev misa. Doesn't matter if he's a Seventh-day Adventist. Doesn't matter if you keep Friday as a day off. Doesn't matter if you keep Sunday as a day off. Chayev misa. He thinks he's doing a good thing. He thinks he's serving God. Not only is he not doing a good thing, he's actually chayev misa. Certainly, if he makes it into somewhat of a festival, he's chayev misa. Now, the next line of the Rambam is probably the ikar of the shir. Klaloi shel davar. Ein manichin oisan lechadesh das. We do not allow goyim to invent religion. Velasois mitzvos la'atzman midaitan. And make up new mitzvahs. In other words, the Rambam is editorializing here. The Rambam is injecting rationale to why a guy is not to learn Torah and why a guy is not to keep Shabbos. You know why? Because if a guy learns Torah and a guy keeps Shabbos, he's inventing a new religion. What are you doing? You're serving God by learning Torah. No one told you to learn Torah. You're serving God by keeping Shabbos. What business do you have keeping Shabbos? You're not allowed to make innovations to religions. Then the Rambam says, Goyim have two choices. There are only two religions in this world. Anybody know what they are? What are the two religions in this world? Well, there's Torah Judaism. And what's the other religion?
Not Jewish.
That's not a religion.
Noach.
That's right. The Zayin Mitzvahs B'nai Noach. You have two choices in this world. Either be a Jew or follow the Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach. So we tell this guy, either become a Jew and keep 613, or follow what has been mandated to you, and that is keep 7. But you want to make up a new halacha, that goyim learn Torah, or goyim keep Shabbos, you're mechadesh, a new religion, you're chayev misa. So one thing, very important thing we see from the Rambam, is there's a reason why a guy cannot learn Torah. Now, this is not found in any Gemara. There's no makar for this. But the Rambam is injecting his rationale that why can a guy not learn Torah? The reason is learning Torah, keeping Shabbos, is inventing a new religion. God told Goyim, just don't steal the cherry, don't steal the peanut. Now you want to rest on Saturday, you want to go to your temple, you want to go to your church and take the rest of the day off for religious reasons. You cannot invent new religion. That's the Rambam's understanding of why Goyim are not allowed to learn Torah. The Rambam continues that Ella Oya Geret Sedek the Kaval Kala Mitzvahs, either convert wholesomely and keep all 613, Ayamoid b'Torasai, or keep your Torah, V'la Yosef, V'la Yigareya, don't add and don't take away. V'yam Asak b'Torah, but if he does learn, Shavas, or he keeps Shabbos, Chidesh Davar, or if, let's say, Goyim invent a new religion, let's say Goyim say that I feel in order to come close to God, you need to go to the store the day after Kratzmach and go shopping, and that's how I come close to my God, by getting good deals on Black Friday. That's also inventing a new religion, and he's chayiv misa. Makin oisai, listen to it, we smack him. V'oin shin oisai, we punish him. U'moidin oisai shu chayiv misa, we tell him, hey, pal, you're chayiv misa. Aval eino nerag, but we don't kill him. Which, that itself is hard to understand. What is that supposed to mean? That we tell him he's chayiv misa, but we don't kill him. Either he's chayiv misa, or he's not chayiv misa. What does the Rambam mean? We tell him he's chayiv misa, but we don't kill him. The Rambam continues. Ben Noach, sheratza la'asos mitzvah, mishar mitzvahs haTorah. Let's say a guy wants to keep other mitzvahs, kedei lekabel schar, to get reward. Let's say a guy says, look, I want to get a big chelik in Olam Haba. When I go up to Olam Haba, I want the good kind of potato kugel, the overnight kugel. I also want a piece. So therefore, the guy says, I want to be Mekayim mitzvahs, so I'm going to take a lulav and esrog. Right? He goes to, he takes up the mitzvah tanks on their offers, and he says, what are you doing? Why don't you put on the yarmulke? Yarmulke, I'm not a Jew. Why don't you make a bracha? I'm not Jewish, so what are you doing? I want schar in Olam Haba. We don't stop him. And if he brings an oila, we accept it. If he gives tzedakah, we're makabel. So the problem here is that the Rambam contradicts himself.
No, but what does that mean, Ben Noach, and what does that mean, Goy?
Same thing. Ben Noach and Goy, it's the same thing.
Same thing?
It's the same thing, yeah. So now the problem is, what's the Rambam talking about? What's going on over here? The Rambam in Halacha Tes says that we don't let a guy keep Shabbos. We don't let a guy learn Torah. We don't let a guy invent religion. And in Halacha Yud, the Rambam says that if a guy wants to do mitzvahs, God, we're Noisai, we're Unshanoi. I'm going to take a little bit of an answer. Why? Because I believe that God gave them to Jews. But to take a little bit. That's be the time. A guy that thinks Hashem commanded him cannot keep the mitzvah. In fact, we stopped him. In Halacha Yud, we're talking about what? The guy is doing a mitzvah. In the Sarah. Abraham Bervetz, Shiva of Gated. And like this, he says that comes out the difference between the guy is keeping it as a mitzvah v'oisa. Halacha, the guy is keeping it as a eino mitzvah. Then that guy may be not to learn Torah. It depends why they're learning Torah. If a guy is learning Torah because he thinks God commanded him to learn, so then makya oisai. But if he's learning Torah as a mi she'eino mitzvah v'oisa, then he could learn Torah. And instead of Ram Gorwitz, this is very maduyik in the book. Torah tziva anu. What's our inheritance? The fact that it's Torah. It's not an inheritance to do it as a Mishainu Mitzvah. So guys, let's talk about the problem with that. And then, learn Torah. You didn't learn Torah as a Mitzvah. You learned Torah as a command. You learned Torah as an Inoi Mitzvah V'Oisa. However, b'mechilas kvoid Torasei harama, with all due respect to Rabbi Ram Gorwitz, this is not what the Rambam is saying. The Rambam is very clear, not like this. And I believe the Sefer Or Avram is mistaken. Because if you look carefully in Halacha Yud, the Rambam says, when the Rambam says that a guy is allowed to be Mekayim mitzvahs as an Eino mitzvah v'oisa, you have to look carefully which mitzvahs he's talking about. Look in the beginning of Halacha Yud. Ben Noach sheratza lasos mitzvah mishar mitzvahs haTorah. If a guy wants to keep the rest of the mitzvahs, we kedei lekabel schar, to get reward, ein moinin oisei lasos, so we don't stop him. What does the Rambam mean if a guy wants to keep shar mitzvahs? Anybody know what the Rambam means?
7 mitzvahs.
Shar mitzvahs.
Out of the 7.
Aside from the 7.
Aside of the 7. Yeah. Out of the 7.
The remainder.
He is obligated to keep the 7, but if he wants to do more...
So I say no, that's not what the Rambam means. The Rambam means shar mitzvahs what?
Meaning that the 7 that he's keeping because HaKadosh Baruch Hu...
What does he mean the other mitzvahs? What other ones?
The other are besides the 7, but with the right kavanah that...
I think he means more than that. In Halacha Tes, the Rambam was talking about Shabbos and Torah. Halacha Yud, the Rambam saying, what about other mitzvahs besides keeping Shabbos and learning Torah? Oh, the Rambam says, if a guy wants to keep other mitzvahs besides Shabbos and besides learning Torah as an Einoi Mitzvah V'Oisa, we let them. But not Shabbos and Torah. Shabbos and Torah, the Rambam said in Halacha Tes, that a guy cannot keep under any circumstances. The Rambam Halacha Yud, when he says Shar Mitzvahs, he's going on Halacha Tes. Halacha Tes, he's saying, a guy is not allowed to keep Shabbos, even if he's just doing it to get schar. A guy is not allowed to learn Torah for religious reasons, even if he's just doing it to get schar, even if he recognizes he's not commanded. But other mitzvahs, besides Shabbos, besides Limud Torah, those mitzvahs he's allowed to keep to get schar.
What the all the mitzvahs is Torah.
No. He can't learn. In other words, Rabbi Ram Gorwitz is learning that Halacha Yud is saying that a guy is allowed to keep any mitzvah as an Eino Mitzvah V'Oisa. He's allowed to keep Shabbos. He's allowed to learn Torah as an Eino Mitzvah V'Oisa. I don't think the Rambam is saying that. The Rambam is differentiating between Halacha Tes and Halacha Yud. Halacha Tes, he's talking about keeping Shabbos, learning Torah. And those two mitzvahs, even if he thinks he's Einoi Mitzvah, if he's doing it for religious reasons, that's considered inventing religion. Because learning Torah and keeping Shabbos are so fundamental to the religion. Keeping Shabbos and learning Torah really is the hallmark of our connection to God, that if a guy is keeping them for any religious reason whatsoever, even if he doesn't think he has to, if he's just doing it because he thinks this is how he gets closer to God or he'll get more reward, he's out. He can't do it. We're makin oisei. We're einshin oisei. And he's chayiv misa. Halacha yud is, but what about a guy who wants to keep shar mitzvahs? What is shar mitzvahs? Not just other mitzvahs besides the Zayin mitzvahs b'nei Noach. Other mitzvahs besides Shabbos and Torah. Those mitzvahs he's allowed to keep as an eino mitzvah. So according to the way we're reading the Rambam, and by the way, the Tzvi Pesach Frank reads the Rambam exactly like us. Tzvi Pesach Frank, look at number 13, writes explicitly that a ben Noach that wants to do other mitzvahs to get schar, the Shas Shuvas Har Tzvi in Yoredeus from Reish Tesvav, we don't stop him. Says the Har Tzvi, that means he could keep it as an einoi mitzvah v'oisa, but not Shabbos and Torah. Shabbos and Torah he can't even keep as an einoi mitzvah v'oisa.
Sorry, but Glatstein, the mitzvah is not part of the Torah. By me now taking lulav is not like I'm learning Torah.
No, it's not like you're learning Torah.
Why not?
It's not a mitzvah limud Torah.
I'm Mekayim the Torah.
Mekayim a mitzvah, but it's not limud Torah.
The mitzvah comes out of the Torah.
It comes from the Torah. So you don't. When you do a mitzvah, you don't get schar limud. Talmud Torah keneged kulam, but not asiyas hamitzvos are not keneged kulam.
So what is by Yunus like when it says lasok b'divrei Torah? What does that mean, lasok b'divrei Torah?
Lasok means to learn.
To learn?
To be oisik. Not just sit back on a hammock and sip iced tea and learn. Be oisik means limud. Bislavas. It means limud. Esek halimud.
Esek halimud.
Can.
I have different pshat.
Is that a ger that wants to become a goat, that wants to become a ger, that's why he has to do something on Shabbat?
But why?
Yeah, wait, that's why he has to do something on Shabbat. Yeah.
So,
Well, there, he's doing it because
because he's
not allowed to.
he's not allowed to keep Shabbos. He's not allowed to keep Shabbos.
That proves that the Rambam.
That proves that what? That you mean why can't he just keep Shabbos as an eino mitzvah isa?
That proves that the Rambam.
Okay.
Besides Shabbos and mitzvah.
I hear. Good point. Unless we're afraid he's not going to be able to distinguish, and he might do it, he'll think he's commanded. Okay, but you're right. According to Rabbi Avram Gorwitz, a guy would be allowed to keep Shabbos as an eino mitzvah isa. But the way we're reading the Rambam, no, he can't keep Shabbos, he can't learn Torah under any circumstances at all. So we're reading the Rambam like the Har Tzvi, that it's not just a guy could keep any mitzvah, including Talmud Torah and Shabbos, as eino mitzvah isa. No. Only Shar mitzvahs he could keep as eino mitzvah isa, but Shabbos and Torah he cannot even keep as eino mitzvah isa. So now we can't say then that Noach learned Torah as an eino mitzvah isa because we're not accepting that heter. We're saying that Goyim cannot learn Torah even as eino mitzvah isa. So now we have to come up with a heter for Noach. How is Noach allowed to learn Torah? So comes along the Shas Tshuvas 3-day Eish. 3-day Eish, Rabbi Chiel Yaakov Weinberg.
What number is this?
Number 8. Your lucky number. And the 3-day Eish, Rabbi Chiel Yaakov Weinberg was one of the great contemporary poskim who dealt in a very innovative way with the challenges of modern society. And he writes in Chilek Beis, Siman Nun Hey, question is, are you allowed to give shiurim before a gathering where you have goyim in the crowd as well? For example,
the Ramban was in the Kuch.
All right, the Ramban had an ecumenical debate with Pablo Cristiani, right? Okay, we'll have to see. First of all, I don't know if that's what his career path of choice was.
Well, he had no choice.
Right, he had no choice. But here, a question like this: here you have a Rebbe in the yeshiva. He's doing his finances, and he's not cracking the bill. It's not happening for him. His $40,000 a year is not making it. He sees an ad. They're looking for a professor in university, right? For $40,000 credit, right? And he figures, if he teaches the same thing in the university, the same Kamatz Aleph in the university, he could, quadruple his salary in a month. So, and he'll go teach over here. Most of the people are Jewish anyway. Are you allowed to teach Torah if they're goyim in the class? Or, for example, about a year ago or so, 2 years ago, they sent a delegation from South Korea to a place in New Jersey called Lakewood. And they came in with their cameras, and they observed the Talmudic process, because in South Korea, as part of the curriculum, they learn Gemara. They learn Gemara. So they want to learn Gemara, that's their problem or not problem. Question is, are you allowed to teach Goyim Torah?
For the right price.
What is that?
Okay, so comes along Rabbi Chiel Yaakov Weinberg, he says like this. Not the pshat that a guy is allowed to learn Torah as an Einoi Mitzuva V'Aisa. Because if a guy is learning Torah because he thinks this is something admirable, he's Chayav Misa. It's not admirable for a guy to learn Torah. This is not a way for all mankind to connect to Hashem, only for Yisrael. However, in other words, if the guy's intent is religious, even in the slightest bit, it's considered a gezela. He cannot learn Torah. What if the guy is not learning Torah for religious reasons? What if he's learning Torah for purely intellectual reasons? He wants to stimulate his mind. On Sunday he does the New York Times crossword puzzle. On Monday, what's that math game? With the Sudoku.
Yeah.
Oh no, Sudoku, right? And then Tuesday he learns art scroll. He opens up the art scroll. He learns Chamesh Esrei Nashim Paitros Sarasayim, right? So he likes to mental gymnastics, right? Let's say a guy says, "I know God doesn't want me to learn. I know I'm not getting closer to God." But I find it very stimulating to learn Gemara. Instead of doing a crossword puzzle, I'm going to learn Shas. Says Rabbi Yechiel Yaakov Weinberg. If you look carefully at the Rambam holds that it's not a chayk that guy might not learn Torah. The Rambam put in words, Klaloi shal davar ein manichin oisan lechadesh das v'lasos mitzvahs la'atzman. We don't allow goyim to innovate new religion. But this guy is not innovating religion. He's sitting back, he has a pile, he has his crossword puzzle, his art scroll Gemara, his Sudoku, and he's doing different mental gymnastics. So he's just doing it for purely intellectual curiosity. He's not doing it for religious reasons. Says the Sridei Eish, a guy who learns Torah, what he calls in the third paragraph, Me'avas Chachma. He's doing it because he loves wisdom. Or he wants to appreciate Jews. He understands. God gave the Torah to the Jewish people. The Jewish people are Banim Atem Lashem Lekechem. And the Goyim come under our banner. So then under these circumstances, if the guy is not doing it for religious reasons, a guy is allowed to learn Torah. Okay? So then we could say, how is Noach allowed to learn Torah? The answer is he wasn't doing it for religious reasons. What do you think? What did he do all day in the Teva? What did he do all day for 120 years? He built the Teva the whole day? How long does it take he came home at night. Well, what's he going to do? So he's going to have a thumb wrestle. So he learned Torah as mental gymnastics. Possibly, according to the Sridei Eish, it is permitted to learn Torah if a person is doing that only me'avas hachachma. Not like the Ar Avram, not like the Rav Avram Gorwitz. Avram Gorwitz says you're allowed to learn Torah as an Einoi Mitzuva V'Oisa. No, we're saying no, as an Einoi Mitzuva V'Oisa you can't learn Torah. But just me'avas hachachma, that would be permitted.
What's the Roshit? It wasn't bet given peitaf.
Where?
In Norway. מותר לעשות שיעורים בבית גימל פייטה.
גפת, גמרא פוסקים ותוספות.
Or begufei Torah.
גופי תורה.
Where is it?
First line.
באדינג, אם מותר לעשות שיעורים בגפת.
Oh, okay.
Great.
Yeah, one of those two. Yeah. Okay, so now, according to this, says the Sridei Eish, and says Rabbi Avram Gorwitz, we could answer a Tosfos in Masechta Chagiga, because the Gemara says in Masechta Chagiga, Amar Rabbi Ami, Ein moisrin divrei Torah l'oivei kechavim. You're now to teach Torah to Goyim, Shenamar, Layasachein l'chol Goy, u'mishpatim bal yida'um. You cannot make known the Torah to Goyim. Frek Tosfos, why do I need a special limud? Why do I need Rav Ami? Why did I need Rav Ami to come to yeshiva that day? Rav Ami could have stayed home. Because once I know that a guy is not allowed to learn Torah, and a guy that learns Torah is chayiv misa, like the pasuk says, Torah tziva lanu Moshe Moira Shah, then of course he can't teach him, Because by teaching him your Iver, Lifnei Iver, Leisitei Nuchshal. Right, for instance, is a guy allowed to eat Iver Menachai?
No.
No. Do I need another pasuk to say I can't feed a guy Iver Menachai? Once the guy can't eat it, of course I can't feed him. Feeding him would be Iver Menachai. So if feeding him is Lifnei Iver, why do I need a separate limud? You can't teach Torah to Goyim. Once I have a pasuk that Goyim are not allowed to learn Torah, so we know I can't teach a guy Torah because Lifnei Iver lo sitei mechsha. So why does Rav Ami need a special separate limud of lo yasachin l'chol goy mishpatim al yidam? I don't need a separate limud. I already know you can't teach a guy Torah because Lifnei Iver lo sitei mechsha. So comes the Sri Dayesh. And comes Rabbi Yaakov Weinberg, that of course, if a guy is not allowed to learn Torah, you're Iver, Lifnei Iver, if you teach him Torah. But that's only if he's learning Torah, because he's doing it for religious reasons. But what if he's learning Torah for mental exercise, for purely intellectual stimulation? Then the guy is allowed to learn Torah, yeah? Comes Rav Ami, even though the guy's allowed to learn, you can't teach him. That's why I need Rav Ami. Because there are cases that Goyim are allowed. Right, Tosfos' kasha was, if Goyim are not allowed to learn, then I don't need a special pasuk that you can't teach him. Because if he can't learn, teaching him is Lifnei Iver Leisitei Milshal. Comes along the Sri Dayesh and the Or Avram. And he says, not so fast. There are things Goyim are allowed to learn. They're allowed to learn for the love of the Chachma. Comes Rav Ami and he says, you can't teach them. So it comes out, halacha l'maisa, that a guy is allowed to learn Torah? It depends. If he's learning Torah because he thinks God wants him, definitely not. If he thinks he's learning Torah, that it's a good way to connect to God, even though God only commanded the Jews, so Rabbi Avram Gorowitz says yes. The Har Tzvi and us, we say no, you can't do that. The Rambam seems to say no. But when could a guy learn Torah? If he's doing it just because he appreciates the educational value. No. As Eina Mitzvah, he can't learn. What? Right? Because if he's doing it for a religious reason, if he thinks he's going to get schar, we said he can't learn. But if he's just doing it for the mental gymnastics, he's allowed to. But according to Tosfos and Chagiga, you can't teach it to him. You can't teach it to him. Okay? So that's where we're holding right now.
They teach Talmudic law or something in like Harvard University and law school.
So according to what we learned so far, can't do it. Can't do it. Can't do it.
So
okay, so that's what we're holding so far. So the question is, does everybody agree? Does everybody agree? Are there any opinions that you're allowed to teach Torah to Goyim? Well, comes along. Look at number 14. The Shas Tshuvas Be'er Shava. Rabbi Yisachar Ber Eilenberg. Yisachar Ber Eilenberg was born in 1550. He's a Talmud of the Sma, Talmud of the Levush. He's the Rebbe of the Bina Leitim of Azariah Figo. And he says, I've got a problem here. He says, I find that there are a number of Rabbanim that teach Torah to Goyim. But how could that be? The Gemara in Chagiga said, Rav Ami says you're not allowed to teach Torah to Goyim. And says the Be'er Shava, what's really troubling me, so I looked in the Shulchan Aruch, and nowhere in the Shulchan Aruch does it say, you're not to teach Torah to Goyim. It's not brought down the halacha. And certainly the Rambam brings down every single halacha, even halachas that are not nogea b'zman hazeh, even hilchos beis habechira. And the Rambam does not mention a word about the halacha that you're not to teach Torah to Goyim. Therefore, says the Be'er Shava, it appears to me, had I not been afraid, lulei de mistafina, that the reason why the poskim do not bring it down, because we don't paskin like that Gemara. We paskin, you're allowed to teach Torah to Goyim.
Why? Because it's not in the Shulchan Aruch.
The fact that the Shulchan Aruch did not bring it down, the fact that the Rambam didn't bring it down, it must be we paskin, you're allowed to teach Torah to Goyim. And he says, I'll bring you a raya, you're allowed to teach Torah to Goyim.
This is the opposite, the exact opposite.
Exact opposite of the Gemara in Sanhedrin on Tes, and the Gemara in Chagig, you know why the Shulchan Aruch and the Rambam doesn't bring it down? Because we don't paskin that way. And he says, I'll bring you a raya, you're allowed to teach Torah to Goyim. Because the Gemara says in Masechta Shabbos that Moshe Rabbeinu broke what?
The luchos.
The luchos. Yeah? Why did Moshe Rabbeinu break the luchos? The Gemara says this is one of the three things that Moshe did, and Hashem gave him a haskama.
Shkech.
A big shkach. Yasher koichacha sheshibash. Right? Says the Gemara that Moshe Rabbeinu made a kavachomer. If the carbon Pesach, which if you're an RL, can an RL eat the carbon Pesach?
No.
No. So then, kol ha-Torah kula. If Klal Yisrael are a mumar because they're worshiping the Egel, certainly they can't learn the Torah. So Moshe Rabbeinu took the luchos and he smashed them. Moshe Rabbeinu made it kavachomer. If a mumar can't eat carbon Pesach, certainly a mumar l'chol ha-Torah kula cannot partake of the Torah. Frek Tosfos. Why does the Gemara say Moshe Rabbeinu did this on his own? If he made a kavachomer is the will of God, right? A kavachomer is da'iraisa. So if a kavachomer is the will of God, he's not doing it on his own. That's like God is telling him to break the luchos. Says Tosfos, this is not a kavachomer. You can't make a kavachomer from a carbon. Of course, a carbon is a special halacha, and RL can't eat a carbon. But there's no halacha, and RL can't learn Torah. So therefore, Tosfos says, really, a mumar is allowed to learn Torah. Says the Be'er Sheva. If a mumar is allowed to learn Torah, then a guy is also allowed to learn Torah. Because says the Be'er Sheva, there's no difference between a Jew who doesn't keep Shabbos and a guy.
No different?
No difference. So if a Jew who's mechalo Shabbos, who's a mumar, is allowed to learn Torah, then a guy is allowed to learn Torah also. They're both the same. They're both like goyim. And therefore the Be'er Sheva says, even though the Gemara says in Sanhedrin that a guy that learns Torah is chayiv misa, and the Gemara says in Chagiga that you're not to teach Torah to goyim, we don't paskin that way. The Shulchan Aruch doesn't bring it down. We paskin like the other Gemara that says that Moshe Rabbeinu acted on his own. Because really, who told Moshe to break the Torah? Goyim are allowed to learn Torah. However, says the Be'er Sheva, I feel Goyim could learn Torah, but it's always better to be cautious because bottom line is, God agreed to Moshe Rabbeinu. And God gave Moshe Rabbeinu a big shkoyach for breaking the luchos. So that means it's always better to distance yourself from teaching Goyim Torah. But according to the letter of the law, says the Be'er Sheva, you're allowed to teach Goyim Torah. Now the question is, yeah.
I think there's no difference. A Jew who is Mechal Shabbos has to do tshuva. A goy has to go through.
Yes, I mean I don't.
Good, but until he does tshuva, he's like a guy. Until he does tshuva, he has a din of a guy. If he picks up wine, what happens to the wine? It's Yayin Nesach. Yayin Nesach, his mother's a Jew.
It's in certain aspects.
I mean,
regarding halacha, regarding the halachic aspects, how is he allowed to learn Torah? If he has a din of an Oved Avodah Zarah, how could he learn Torah? If let's say he's not doing tshuva, now he just wants to learn Torah.
Seems strange.
Okay, that's the Be'er Sheva.
I never heard this before.
Seems strange.
Yeah. So what is the Jew all about?
So halacha l'maisa, bottom line. Do we paskin like the Be'er Sheva? Be'er Sheva says goyim are allowed to learn Torah. However, Tosfos in Chagiga and the Sridei Eish and the Gemara in Sanhedrin say very clearly goyim are not allowed to learn Torah. So how do we paskin? So we have a tshuva here, a very interesting tshuva from one of the Poiskei Hadar, Shas Tshuvas Shevet HaLevi. Shmuel HaLevi Vosner, one of the Poiskei Hadar, Bizmanenu, he lives in Bnei Brak. So Gesund sein. He brings down a question came to him from Luzern.
What number is this?
A question in number 15. A question came to him from Luzern. Where's Luzern? In Switzerland. And the question is, what? And Avi's mother's from Switzerland also. Wow, what a coincidence. So he says, so he brings down here a shaila about certain practice that Jews and Goyim were getting together for debates and for studies, and you had priests lecturing on Christian theology to Jews and Christians, and you had rabbis come lecturing about Jewish theology to groups of Jews and Goyim together. Number one, are you allowed to teach Torah to Goyim? Number two, are you allowed to learn together with Goyim, religion? Are you allowed to pray together with Goyim? And number four, is it a Chilul Hashem? Is it Chilul Hashem to study together with Goyim? So therefore, comes the Shevet HaLevi, and he says, I know the Be'er Sheva, And I know the Beersheva says that it is permitted for Goyim to learn Torah. However, there's a Gemara in Baba Kama. The Gemara in Baba Kama says on Daf Lamed Ches that the Roman government sent 2 officers to the Jewish people to teach them Torah. And the Chachamim taught them once, taught them twice, taught them 3 times. Asked Tosfos in Baba Kama that how could the Chachamim teach Torah? But the Gemara in Chagiga and Daf Yud Gimel says, Ein Moisrin Torah la'akum. To which Tosfos answers, when the Romans come to learn Torah, they don't come only with open minds. They come with open minds and open guns. And they said, teach us Torah now, or the bullet will put in your head. So therefore, Tosfos says, it was sakanas nefashos, it was pikuach nefesh, and that's how you're allowed to teach Torah to the Goyim. Says the Shevet HaLevi, we see from here a big chiddush, that what if the government comes and says, let's all get together and have peace and harmony and come together for Jewish-Christian relations and we'll study together. Are you allowed to teach them Torah? No! You're only allowed to teach them Torah if your life is on the line. But if it's just to promote good relations, you're not allowed to teach Goyim Torah. So says the Shevet HaLevi, we see from here, not like the Beersheva, halacha lamaisa, you're not allowed to teach Goyim Torah. What about, maybe the streets will be safer if we get together with them and we teach them Torah. We'll have better relations. Too bad. We don't use Torah as a way of creating peace. You may not teach Torah even for Shalom Malchus, even if we'll bring Ava. What if they're going to hate us? They hate us anyway. Doesn't matter. You're not, the only time, according to Tosfos, you're allowed to have a heter to teach Goyim Torah is Pikuach Nefesh. The Beersheva disagrees. Says the Shevet HaLevi, nobody holds like the Beersheva. None of the Achronim agree, and all the Achronim write clearly, halacha lamaisa, under no circumstances could you teach Goyim Torah. Again, a guy is allowed to learn Torah on their own, according to the Sridei Eish, out of intellectual curiosity, but not as an Eina Mitzvah. And then the Shevet HaLevi brings down a Sefer Kadmon from Hayashar Mekendi. Anybody ever hear of him? No. Okay, good. Me neither. So there's an early Sefer called Hayashar Mekendi. Yeah? Who writes that if you want to know why Italian Jewry had its downfall, you want to know why you don't have great Jewish communities in Italy anymore, the reason is because they used to learn with Jews and Galachim together, and that is the beginning of the end. And says the Shevet HaLevi, anybody who knows anything about Jewish history knows that the biggest obstacle to our people and the greatest tragedy for our people was when we come together to study religion with Goyim. So he says you're not allowed to teach Goyim Torah, you're not allowed to sit with them and learn theology.
You're not allowed to eat with them either.
What?
You're not allowed to eat with them either.
That's another.
What do you mean to teach him Torah? Which kind of Torah?
Baba Kama, Baba Metzia, Baba Basra, Krisus, Bechairos, Idyos, Gittin, Ksubis, Torah. Mishnayos, Tanakh, the Ramban. Can't learn Torah with Goyim. That's the bottom line. You can't teach Goyim Torah. A guy could learn on his own as what? For intellectual curiosity. Okay.
So when they ask you a question, you can answer.
Well, they ask you, what's today's holiday? It's Sukkot. What are the 4 species? God commanded me. You give them generalities. You don't
tell them what is the 4 meaning, what is this, what is that.
No, you don't start telling them the Seva Chinuch, the Aravas are the lips, and the Hadassim are the eyes, and that's Pshat Rabbi Kiva Eger says why the Hadassim go higher than the Aravas, because the eyes are, you don't give them the whole Torah. No.
What about we have a Shiur to teach them the 7 mitzvot Noach?
No. A chiv to teach them? It doesn't say it anywhere. That you have to teach them Zayin Mitzvah Noach.
No.
There's a mitzvah of Talmud Torah. You have to teach Torah to Jews. There's no mitzvah you have to teach Torah to Goyim.
What about the 7 mitzvot?
No. Pretty worried about the Jews. Hashem Yishmareinu, man.
Mayhem.
What?
Mayhem. It's an English word also, mayhem.
It was a good.
Well, you don't have to teach. You don't teach them. Okay. Now the question is, what about if a guy wants to convert? So let's say a guy comes to convert. What do we tell them? Say, get lost. And then they come another time, we say, go fly a kite. And then they come a third time, we say, go jump in the lake. And what else? We discourage them.
So why really it's not?
So the question is, so then how do they become gerim? Are you allowed to teach them Torah?
On the other hand, you bring them in.
No, that's when somebody goes off the derech. Mekarve, right?
No, I'm talking about a goy. When he says he wants to become a Jew.
Okay, so eventually, but what about? Bottom line is, if he wants to convert, the halacha is he has to know Torah. But how is he allowed to learn Torah? So you remember the famous Gemara Masechta Shabbos in Daf Lamed Aleph number 16. There was a guy who was passing by the shul and he heard the Sefer writing Ve'ela Abagadim Asher Yasu Chosh and Ephod. He said, "Who do these belong to?" They said, "The Kohen Gadol." He said, "I'm a guy. I will convert. I'm a Nasa. I'll be the Kohen Gadol." So Shammai smacked him. Shammai took the 2x4 and said, "Get lost." And Hillel said, Hillel converted him. But he said, look, you can't be the king unless you know the protocol, so go learn the protocol. And then he got up to the pasuk that has Azar that enters the Mikdash Chayav Misa. He said, is that referred to me? They said, yeah. And he said, okay, forget it. If even a Jew can't enter, certainly I can't enter. Okay. Right? So here you have this guy. He was a guy, and he wanted to convert. I'm not sure he should be the Kohen Gadol. Right? That's like somebody, in Mexico, you have like these 4 guys, they jump into the trunk of a car. It's like 5,000 degrees in there. They drive up the desert, right? Yeah. They pop out of the car in South Dakota. They go, oh, we're in America now. They got through customs. And they turn on, right? And they see there's a presidential debate. So, Mamazeh, what's this? Oh, there's something called the President of the United States. I said, fine. I'll become a citizen. I'm a Nasser. I'll be the next president of the United States. Really? Even Obama won't let him become a citizen, right?
They have to be born.
So here's you have a guy. You have a guy. He wants to become a Jew. I'm a Nasser. He should be the Kohen Gadol. So Frek the Marsha, we know we don't convert people. We don't convert people. We don't convert people for kahuna or for a kavod. Here, the guy, the only reason he wants to convert is for kavod. So, right, and the Gemara says Hillel converted him right away. What do you mean? But the guy's saying, I only want to convert to be the Kohen Gadol. That's not a valid conversion. So says the Marsha, he didn't really convert him right away. First, he tested him out, and only after the person showed his earnestness, only then did Hillel convert. So ask the Marsha, if that's the case, if Hillel didn't convert him right away, then how could he learn Torah? How is he learning Torah if he wasn't Jewish? Says, so we see from here, the Marsha holds that even to convert, you're not to learn Torah. A guy cannot learn Torah, even if he's trying to convert. Says the Marsha that since he's coming to convert, we give him a heter to learn Torah. That's the Marsha. That's what we probably all assume, that even though a guy is not to learn Torah, but if he's doing it to convert, so he's allowed to learn Torah.
But all the Torah came out of the goy.
So one second. Comes Rabbi Kiva Eger, and one of his relatives wrote to him that he lives in a locale where an Arel came to him to convert, but the law of the land was that there's no conversion. So the question they asked Rabbi Kiva Eger, if the law is we're not allowed to convert, how will we convert this guy? So Rabbi Kiva Eger says, you don't convert him. If the law is you're not allowed to convert, Dina de Machusa Dina, it is usher to convert him. What do you need to convert him for? So then the relative, his son-in-law, asked further, but the law is that I could teach him Torah here and go to a different district and convert him there. Says Rabbi Kiva Eger, you're not allowed to teach him Torah, even to convert. You may not teach a guy Torah. So how is he supposed to convert? Says Rabbi Kiva, that's his problem, not our problem. You may not teach a guy Torah even if he wants to convert. The Marsha says that the ger was allowed to learn Torah to convert. Says the Rabbi Kiva Eger, I argue on the Marsha. So it says Rabbi Kiva, if I argue on the Marsha, so then how do you learn Pshat in that Gemara? Because you can't say Hillel converted him right away. So says Rabbi Kiva Eger, there's a Tosfos in Yevamos. That Tosfos asks, if this guy was converting to become the Kohen Gadol, how could Hillel convert him? Tosfos answers, not the pshat he waited to see if he would be earnest and then he converted him. He converted him right away, Tosfos says, because he recognized in him that eventually it will be L'Shem Shamayim. Says Rabbi Kiva Eger, you know what you see from that Tosfos? Why didn't Tosfos say like the Marsha, that first he wanted to determine whether he'd be earnest and then he converted him?
Yeah.
It must be because Tosfos holds that if he was testing him out, you can't learn Torah with the guy. Tosfos had to say he converted him first, because otherwise you can't teach him Torah. So it must be, says Rabbi Kiva Eger, Tosfos holds, you cannot teach Torah to a guy, even to convert.
So how are they doing it today?
We don't. It must be we follow the Marsha. So I'm just saying, it's not so simple that in other words, this isser of a guy learning Torah is so serious that the opinion of Rabbi Kiva Eger is, even an earnest guy, you cannot teach him Torah.
Wow.
You cannot teach him Torah, even if he's doing it to convert. The Marsha disagrees, and presumably we hold like the Marsha. Now, according to the Marsha, Rabbi say, we have maybe another heter for Noach. Because according to the Marsha, why is a ger allowed to learn Torah? Why is a ger allowed to learn Torah? But he's a guy. The answer is, why is a guy not allowed to learn Torah? Because he's stealing our inheritance. But this guy, by learning Torah, is he really stealing our inheritance? He's learning to know what to do when he joins us. So he's not stealing. He has to learn this in order to know what to do. So you could say the same thing about Noach. Noach, you know why he learned Torah? Because he knew God would command him to take the kosher behemoths. So he had to know what the kosher behemoths. He was learning for a purpose. And that's what the Sefer Pardes Yosef suggests. That the same way a ger, according to the Marsha, is allowed to learn Torah to know what to do when he converts, so too Noach was learning Torah to know how to follow what Hashem commanded him. Another possible answer, Rabbi Isai, is let's go back to the Lashon of the Rambam. The Rambam said, Makin oisai, we hit him. V'oin shenoisai, we punish him. Umaydian lai, we tell him shuchayev misa. Ve'eno nerag, but we don't kill him. So we ask him, if he's chayev misa, why don't we kill him? So if you look at number 21, the Minchas Chinuch says, when you see in the Rambam that we tell someone he's chayev misa, but we don't kill him, what is that symptomatic of? That's symptomatic of he's chayev misa midivrei soifrim. He's only chayev misa midrabana. So Mamela, you take a look in the Minchas Chinuch, number 21, on the 5th line in the second paragraph. Ayin Rambam, Perek Yud Malachim, Nira Midvarav, the goy haloi metoyo, eino rak, Isser Drabanan. There were no rabbis around in the times of Noach. There were no Isser Drabanan yet. So how could Noach learn Torah? Because the whole Isser is an Isser Drabanan, and there were no Rabbanan back then. So there are no Isser Drabanan. So he's allowed to learn. He has no problem. And that's another answer suggested by Pardes Yosef. Okay. Another very interesting case. Okay. We meet the father. There's a woman. Look in the Igros Moshe, Yardech, like Beis, Simon Kuflam Beis. A woman, she converts, reform conversion. What do you call a woman who converts through reform? A shiksa. That's what you call her. She's a shiksa. She's a full-fledged shiksa. In every way. Says Rav Moshe, what do you call her children? Goyim. What should you do to this guy? What should you tell him?
What guy? What are you talking about?
The guy, he marries a girl, converts reform, and he has children. What do you tell him? You have to get divorced. You must get divorced.
Well, how we do but how can you get divorced?
Better get.
She's not Jewish.
It's question. Going to be a question. Going to be a questionable gerus, right? Because she's doing it l'shem ishus.
I mean, there's only a civil divorce.
Says Rav Moshe, it's a mitzvah to convince him.
What do you mean? He's right. He's right. Never was kiddushin here.
What?
Never was kiddushin.
No, there's a
She's goya.
To leave her. In other words, to get rid of her. To be oized, to leave her.
No, you said divorce.
Yeah.
Correct.
Thank you. Right? What do you? So Rav Moshe says you have to tell him, try to get divorced. Otherwise, you should tell him, don't be nice to him. You know, he comes to you and says, Afrilach and Chanukah, and he comes with his family. Don't smile at him. Tell him you should know your wife's a guy. Don't cover it up, because it's very important that she knows she's a guy and that her children know that they're goyim. Otherwise, they're going to fool people in the future. So it's very common in business relations. I don't want to say anything. I don't want to disturb the peace. I don't want to insult anyone. Really, there's an obligation to make it clear. The person's married to a guy, the children are guy. But says Rav Moshe, but fine, you weren't able to do this. Your relative is married to this girl who converted through reform, and the whole family is getting together for Pesach, and your parents are sitting at the table, and you want to say over the Haggadah to the parents, you want to be mezakeh them in the Haggadah, and your brother is there, and he's married to this girl who is converted through reform. Are you allowed to say over the Haggadah and translate and explain? You want to say over, your minhag is, you say over the Haggadah with all the Chassam Sofers on the Haggadah. She's sitting there. She's probably the most interested person there. She has no Yetzer Hara, right? She's a Goya. Are you allowed to say over Torah to the family? She's listening. You're not allowed to teach Torah Goyim. What would you say? So, let us pause for a moment before we see what Rav Moshe says. There's a similar shaila raised in number 24, the Shalas Tshuvas Malamed L'Hoyel, Rav David Tzvi Hoffman. There's a guy in the Kehila who is married to a guy, and the kid is 9 years old. He has no Mila. He's a guy Gamor, and the father sends him to Yeshiva Gedola, right? Yeshiva Gedola in Germany. And the question is, in the curriculum of the Yeshiva, in Chumash, in Mishnah, in Gemara, and the father insists the kid go to a yeshiva, doesn't want the kid being stabbed, doesn't want the kid being mugged. And the question is, you're a Rebbe in the classroom, there are 30 students, one of them is a guy. Are you allowed to teach Torah? Says Rav David Tzvi Hoffman. First of all, you have to know that according to the letter of the law, you may not teach Torah to Goyim. Now listen carefully. There were many Rishonim that learned Torah with Goyim, and he writes, the Sefarno learned with a well-known guy, Reichlin, and Rabbi Eliyahu Bachur learned with Goyim. First of all, the reason is they did it to save Klal Yisrael. And by the way, this is the oldest trick in the book. You ever hear people saying, whoa, we're allowed to do this, the Rambam did it, the Ramban did it. First of all, you have to know, you can't bring rayas from what Rishonim did 1,000 years ago. Because says the Rav David Tzvi Hoffman, even though they did it, they were wrong. They were wrong.
Well,
we can't question them, they're much greater than us. But if you want to know what the halacha is for us, we cannot teach Torah to Goyim. How did they do it? First of all, they did it to save Klal, and second of all the Gedolim disagreed. They were not allowed to teach Torah to Goyim. Okay. Then he says like this. What you need to do is you need to go over to the father and convince him not to send his kid to this school. First of all, you have to tell him, Torah is not a music. Torah is not a discipline. You know what your kid's going to learn in school? That if you desecrate Shabbos, you're chayav skila. He's going to come home and say, hey Dad, why are you being mechala Shabbos? It's not going to be good for you. You tell the father it's not going to be good for you to send your kid to this school. The kid's going to come home and tell the father everything he's doing wrong. But if the father doesn't listen to you, then take the kid out and give him a special shiur in the Zayin Mitzvahs B'nai Noach. And if the father doesn't listen to him, there's a heter, he says, to teach Goyim, Nevi'im, Ksuvim, so that Goyim know that there's something called Mashiach, and one day the Jews will reign supreme. You have to get them used to this idea now, so that when it happens, it won't be too much of a shock. Also, says Rav David Tzvi Hoffman, you're allowed to teach them the stories of the Torah. Teach Goyim about Makas Dam, that when you start up with Jews, God will destroy your water. And if you go further, frogs are going to jump all over you. Goyim need to know these kind of things. That if you start up with Jews, they're going to have tsaras. But bottom line, and then take the kid out for the Gemara share. However, if the father insists on sending the kid to the school, and you can't kick him out, either kick the kid out or close down the yeshiva.
Quit.
What'd you say, Rabbi? What'd you say?
Close the yeshiva.
Either send the kid home
unreal.
or close the yeshiva. You cannot
Unheard.
teach Torah to Goyim. And this is Rav David Tzvi Hoffman in Germany, who is known as somebody perceptive to the needs of the time. Nevertheless, he says like this: V'em gam bezel lo yoyva, azayim yesh yichilas biyadoi laharchik hanar milim azeh. If you could send the kid out, yachikenu ba'koch shalav. Do it against the will of the father.
Boy, that's strong.
But teach him is a chil Hashem, and everybody will agree to me. This is the best way to go. However, Moshe, and then if you'd ask David Tzvi Hoffman, so what do you do? This lady is sitting at the Seder table. I'm going to start dashing about the Haggadah. She's a guy.
Right.
So what would David Tzvi Hoffman say? Tell her to go into the kitchen, or go out the front door, or go out the back door, or go out the side door, or at the wrong night, come back tomorrow night, but you can't have her at the table. Says Rav Moshe Aheter. Rav Moshe says the isser of teaching Torah to Goyim is only if you're mechabein to teach them. But if your kavanah is to teach Torah to the Jews who are there, and it happens to be there are also Goyim there, it's not usher just because there's a guy there. There's no isser to say words of Torah that you know are going to end up in the ears of a guy. The isser is you can't be mechavein to transmit Torah to a guy. So I'm sitting at the Seder. I have in mind to teach to the father and mother, to my other relatives. So there's a guy at the table. I don't want her. I wish she wasn't there. What can I do? She happens to be there. Or let's say someone has an aide. Someone has an attendant. Someone has a cleaning lady. So they're going to listen in. I'm not, then I can't learn. I'm not mechavin to give them over Torah. There's no isser.
So
the person giving the Torah or the person accepting it? So why learning the isser is on the person giving?
A guy, it's not our problem with the guys. A guy can't learn Torah. If the guy's doing it for religious reasons, then the guy's not to learn. But it's not my problem. It's not my problem.
But today in most of the seminars, they go there, a lot of Jews that they are mumarim, and they come to listen to the lectures and everything. So how they will come Bali Tshuva?
Okay, again...
how are they going to make a Bali Tshuva?
Maybe they don't have a din of mumar.
I was at a seminar, half of the people was all...
they're coming...
And today you see them all, they are Magid Shiur today.
Again, they're coming to...
I don't understand this.
Where are they?
In Arachim. Yeah. Today these people, they are Magid
Again, in general we're talking about Goyim. It was only the
But you just said before that they sound like a
the Beersheba was the only one who made that hashva'ah. The Beersheba was the only one who made that equation. But in general, a Jew, they probably today don't have a din of a mumar. Okay, so let's come to our shaila. So what would you say?
Yeah.
Are you allowed to give a shiur and then put it on a media where it's available to Jews? Let's say Kol HaLashon. I'm not sure how many Goyim are calling up Kol HaLashon. But certainly TorahAnytime.com. I know for a fact that there are Goyim that listen to Shiurim. Right? Sometimes they comment. Sometimes they send questions. Or so are you allowed to put Torah on a media, on an avenue, where it's available to the masses, where Goyim are going to learn Torah?
Yeah.
Well, the first shaila... What?
By saying if a guy comes to your Seder, you're teaching everyone else.
Right.
So here they...
Okay, you could say it's a little bit more tricky. Because by a Seder, I'm a chavein to teach
everyone else. So here also, when you put a shiur on TorahAnytime.com, you want from a Yidden now.
Yeah.
That's what I want, but Lamaisa, it's equally available.
It's 99.9%.
Right.
Do you get these kind of messages from Goyim?
Sometimes, yeah.
And what do you answer them then?
I don't often respond. But your bottom line is, the most similar question that was parallel to this was a tshuva on the Srideish, Shas tshuva Srideish, where he received the question regarding Rav Pinchas Teitz, who was a rabbi in Elizabeth, who used to have a shiur Matzah Shabbos on the radio. He taught Gemara Matzah Shabbos on the radio. And the question is, there were Goyim who listened to the shiur. Now, why a guy who has nothing better to do with his time on a Matzah Shabbos, poor guy, he has nothing better to do with his life than to listen to a Gemara shiur in Yiddish on a Matzah Shabbos, But the question is, are you allowed to do that? And the Srideish said, you're allowed to do that. Why? Because a guy who's tuning in on a Matzah Shabbos to listen, he's not doing it for religious reasons. He's doing it for for education. He's doing it me'avas hachachma. And we learned earlier that a guy is allowed to learn Torah me'avas hachachma. But l'chayra, according to the tshuva in Rav Moshe, according to Rav Moshe's tshuva, it would be l'chayra even more pashat. That when you give a shiur, whether it's on the radio, whether it's on a tape, whether it's on a CD, whether it's on the internet, the kavana is for those people who need to know. And other people could tune in as well. The kavana is not primarily for them, and the issur of teaching Torah to goyim is only, like Rav Moshe says, if you're mechavin for that. So let's come back to Noach. How is Noach allowed to learn Torah? So we have a few heterim. Rabbi Avram Gorovitch would say he did it as einoi mitzuva v'oiseh. Our pshat in the Rambam, the Sridayesh's pshat in the Rambam is he did it for intellectual stimulation, and that is permitted. Or you could say, like the Marsha, that Noach learned Torah because he learned what he needed to know, just like a ger is allowed to learn Torah for what he needs to know. Noach was learning Torah for what he needed to know. Or you could say, like the Minchas Chinuch, that the issur of a guy learning Torah is only midrabanan, and that's how Noach was allowed to learn Torah. Or you could say, like the Gur Aryeh, that before the Torah was given, there's no issur for goyim to learn Torah. Or you could say, like the Lavush, that Noach had a bris milah, or you could say he learned it from the internet. And if you learned it from the internet, no, just joking, there was no internet back then. So you have to say, like the Gur Aryeh, or like the Lavush, that Koydem Matan Torah is permitted for goyim to learn Torah. I wish you all a wonderful day.
All the best. You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.